Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let We Hear From Doc. I'm your host, Amanda Japal George, and with me is Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Claudius Mitchell. So, how was your weekend, Doc?
Quiet, but as usual, enjoy with friends, domino sessions. And of course, part of this more social activities here on Friday.
No cricket?
No cricket.
Well, Doc, let's jump right into it because we don't have much time. During your time as leader of the new National Party, the government moved to acquire a majority stake in Grenlec. Looking back, what was the rationale behind that decision, and how do you view its impact on Grenada today?
Well, first of all, the issue is not whether government is in control of a major utility or company
Mm.
as Grenlec. That may be could be in private hands, it could be
Mhm.
in government hands. The question is the ability or the condition under which the control is done. For
Mm.
example, Grenlec is the only utility company in the electricity company in the country. It's a national security asset.
Mhm.
Because if Grenlec is destroyed, it affects the security, the whole aspects of fundamentals of the country. So you have to see Grenlec in a very specific light,
Mhm.
slightly different from telephone, when in fact you have various
Mhm.
companies competition. But when you have a one company in control of an essential assets, as when like you want to be careful. So when we came into government in '84, we Grenada was controlled by the British company Colonial Corporation. Later on, after they sold it to the PRG had acquired it in '79. So when we got into office, the company had lots of problems financially, with it, inability to get equipment to necessarily service the country, and only 45% of the country had electricity.
Mhm.
So we worked with the company then and with the workers and developed the company to the point that 95% of the country had electricity. So when people talking about nothing happened during LMP time, they clearly wasn't even aware or mischievous in soundings, or clearly were given wrong information. So clearly the company growth was quite successful during that period or management of the company. But clearly, still, it meant that government still had to find resources, and
Mhm.
the workers in the company helped in the development that took place in that particular period. I always praise the workers of Grenlec and the management of the company then for the success of the development that took place in that corporation. So when we lost government in 1990, later on, the NDC sold the company to a private corporation, a US based family business,
Mhm.
WRB. And that so that company was in complete control. So government, a private sector operation that did not have the mechanism in place to ensure that the services are brought to the country as a whole. Clearly didn't have the same national interests as as the government would
Mhm.
have,
Yeah.
unless it was structured into the agreement, and
Mhm.
that was not done. So clearly, they made the company, a foreign company, WRB, made millions and millions of resources for the country, from the people of the country. So when we got back into government, in after that particular period, we decided, well, look, we must do something about that in
Mhm.
that period, '95 to 2008, and therefore we did a lot
Mhm.
to try to ensure that we could get back that company in under some semblance of control, and we had to spend enormous amount of money to acquire the company again because it was in private hands,
Mhm.
and they insisted on certain sums that must be obtained to be able to give up that company. we are able to do so. So we are very successful, and the company continued to provide enormous services. And therefore, when we had difficulty with the COVID-19 and also the question of economic problems in the country and people facing crisis and meeting the fundamental um, s- services for the family, we decided that we must, Grenlec owned by government should then make some concessions. For example, reduce the VAT on electricity charges and the other charges that were part of the cost of Grenlec services. We saw to it that some of it were removed and so on. So we got a reduction in price of electricity services to the consumer. But lo and behold, again, when we lost government in 2022, the present prime minister, who was then the lawyer for the private operation operating in Grenada, decided that he's going to remove the concessions that we made for the consumers of the country because, as he said, these were his words, that the shareholders were not making enough profit. But the major shareholder was the people themselves, the taxpayers. So I couldn't understand why are you so unhappy. If the shareholders are not making as much as they should make, and they were making serious profit, but they were owned by the people, and the people were able to get some benefits through lower costs, why are you so uncomfortable? There were some private sector shareholders involved, but the majority share was government. So they did remove, and therefore you see the cost of electricity, how it's skyrocketing, it's skyrocketing in the country and making it very difficult for the population to obtain, because almost everything you do requires electricity services. So it's affecting small business, it's affecting social services, it's affecting the average man in the country, in the rural part of the country who has difficulty not working, unable to feed his family properly, and the cost of electricity is so high. So that was a serious, to me, a terrible decision on the part of the government. So successive NDC government have consistently done things that affect the price of electricity and the services of electricity to the people as a whole. So I think that is something that we. So I want to reiterate the point: the government does not necessarily have to control share has to be the major shareholder in a corporation as Grenlec. But if it does privatize, it must ensure that the policies under the privatization protects the taxpayers, and that the private sector person is not free to do whatever he or she wishes to do. And that was the fundamental weakness. But essentially, one has to be very careful ensuring that you have private sector operation in a major utility operation as Grenlec, which is clearly the only service, electricity services in the country. So I think this is something that needs to be, people need to understand. A lot of people seem to have forgotten where we came from, and where how these services have been made to be brought in the hands of the people, and what benefits that came from that. And so I want to make it very clear that I'm not suggesting that it must be government control, but if it doesn't, then the policy involved with the private sector control must be to protect the taxpayers also, while protecting the shareholders' value and interest.
And it's so unfortunate because right now, as of August, we've seen that electricity prices have actually doubled.
Yeah, well, that's a fact. I mean, I always tell people why it is that you have private sector people so interested in buying Grenlec. On each occasion, there were a movement to do so. Why are they offering to? The private sector man is not going to try to gain control of a losing a corporation that's not making
No, they want to make a
some of
profit.
the money. And I always ask, why aren't they interested in buying no
No, sir.
because clearly it's not as attractive
Yeah.
uh, 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 an institution for private sector person as Grenlec is, and similarly so. And that's the point that needs
Mm-hmm.
to be made. And I already
Mm-hmm.
pointed out
Yeah.
the difference Grenlec, the difference of Grenlec in terms of its service
Mm-hmm.
relative to that comparison to that of the telephone, where in fact it's the liberalization which we championed
Mm-hmm.
to have several institutions and companies being able to provide telephone service. Okay, you don't need to have ground lines if you don't want. And now, but you can. Most people are always different, whether it's um, Digicel, whether it's Flow, whether it's other private sector persons, can now compete as far as the telephone service is concerned. So that's why you don't see the concerns lay for as far as these services of telephone and comparatively speaking with Grenlec is
Mhm,
done.
mhm. Doc, government revenue and grants have declined significantly in 2025, including a drop in CBI income. What is your perspective on Grenada's physical landscape today?
Well, first of all, remember the the revenue of government come from a combination of sources.
Mm-hmm,
It comes from the extent of economic activity in the country.
mm-hmm,
So more people do business and get into activities. Government generate revenue, whether it's through VAT, whether it's through other taxation services in the country. So the less economic activity in the country, clearly a reduction in government revenues from those sources I just mentioned. Clearly, others way of revenue is, for example, the CBI,
mm-hmm.
which the sales of passport
Passports.
services under the CBI program, and clearly the government came in, went on a free for all, selling the passports as wild as possible. And that was a concern to me because we had not been doing this. Their sale of passport was several times more in a
Mm-hmm,
short period of time than we had in 5 years.
mm-hmm,
And so, but that was the case. As long as they protect the name of the country, I had no difficulty with this. But clearly, with what is happening now, that has reduced.
mm-hmm,
So the grant component coming from this is reduced. The economic activity in the country has certainly reduced based on their own information. And clearly, the grant that you get from countries abroad, from friendly countries and institutions. And certainly, again, there's been a significant drop in that area because of the government own policies and things. So it's not surprising at a government revenue base
mm-hmm.
must be must have dropped significantly from what it was in
Mm-hmm.
23, 24,
25.
and must so
Mm-hmm,
showing up in 25 accordingly. So I think it has to do with, and again, and even when the services, the revenue drop
mm-hmm,
is evident, the government expenditure in based on the initiative and personal expenditure is increasing. So no wonder why you have a deficit now starting to emerge, which was not the case
mm-hmm,
when the NNP was in government. And remember, when we were in government, while we were providing services and savings and having surpluses on the recurrent side,
mm-hmm,
we at the same time we had thousands of people on the road. The
mm-hmm,
poor people were earning serious resources
mm-hmm,
from our initiative. So you have nothing like that taking place. Clearly, there is not serious drop in any major projects in the country,
mm-hmm,
and in other words, economic activity has declined enormously. So you have a combination of problems and the wastage of government expenditure and the kind of ill thought out initiative of the government, which is not yielding much but wasting taxpayers' resources. So there is clearly mismanagement in a very serious way as far as the present government is concerned, which must concern the citizens of this country, and it is
mm-hmm.
showing up. So all over the place, and that is one. And it must affect social services. I've heard stories where people have been removed citizens who need government support has been removed based on some political perception of their loyalty, political loyalty to the government side of the day, and which is clearly not how these things work.
Mm-hmm.
People have a right to their own political positions, but they have a right to to the services of government and whatever is required for their survival.
Mm-hmm.
Government must help within its limits, of course, and that's why these programs are there. And the criteria for somebody getting resources from this program are well there. So if the criteria is not followed, then I could see the removal. But removing a person based on their perceived political affiliation or support is quite immoral and it contradicts the basic perception of how these programs are supposed to serve.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Mitchell, the US has imposed visa restrictions on some Grenadian officials. How do you view Grenada's position and response in this situation?
Well, first of all, whatever was the cause these restrictions, this removal of visas, would have been the same situation that exists in several countries
Mm-hmm.
in the region.
Mm-hmm.
The question is why one of these countries have their ministers' visa been revoked? I don't know. They have said that was a specific action of the minister, the present minister here, of something that he has done wrong. So it clearly has to be based on the government's lack of initiative with respect to the concerns raised. And then I'm not legitimizing the concerns of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying when in a relationship, you have to be aware what could help you and what could hurt you. And therefore, clearly the other governments must have taken some initiative that helped us to reduce the concerns of the United States government in that area. And therefore they have to be held responsible for what has transpired because a lot of average citizens are getting a lot of problems now. Not just if they start to revoke visas of ministers, the average citizen are going to feel it also.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now only recently in the last week getting a number of parents calling me about their children who studied medicine at St. George University and automatically got um, a residency in the United States. In most cases, we never had major problem because these guys are serving medical services throughout the United States and Canada and all of Europe. Having studied here at St. George's University, but a lot of them have been now refused visas, and it clearly must be related to the perception of what is taking place in Grenada at this time. And I find it strange that the prime minister is now offering to solve the problem between Venezuela and the United States. And his own minister's visas have been revoked and he seems unable. If you can't even get the United States not to revoke ministers' visas based on the government policies, because as I said before, it was not based on the minister doing
Yeah.
any wrongdoing directly. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't understand what the prime minister was offering, why he was offering to solve the problem between Venezuela and the United States, when in fact he can't even solve a basic thing like the removal of visa from one of his ministers or more of his ministers.
As we're on the topic of health, health remains one of the biggest concerns for Grenadians, with rising cases of cancers and other diseases. From your perspective, what steps can individuals and communities take to better protect their health?
Well, I think the health of an individual clearly um, has to be fundamentally the most important responsibility of the individual. There are general things that are known about what keeps you healthy, but clearly your family background and history is an important factor.
Mm-hmm.
But your lifestyle also is an important factor. In other words, you're told to continue to exercise and of course what you eat, also is a factor going forward. So and the things that you eat and drink, sorry, these are factors. So it seems to me that with the concerns being raised, with the increase in health problems in the country, that it has to be something that has to be dealt with at a personal level and also at a national level.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that Ministry of Health must be
Mhm.
involved in helping to analyze and understand what is taking place and to provide advice and support to individuals to be able to protect themselves, because the increasing health problems in the country can be enormous problems economically for the country, and the inability of the country to be able to meet those health needs of
Mhm.
individuals can be very difficult. So it's something, a call that must be made. I personally have constantly during my own period, whenever I speak to young people or people in general, I always mention the fact that I look at myself and I always say, look, I do my exercise daily. I do indulge in little excesses as far as food is concerned, but I also watch and balance it to some extent, and so on going forward. And I always tell people, my mom was 102, going to 103 early next month. She's a good example. She ate most of the food that we all eat throughout her life, but she always um, took care of family history of hypertension, and she always watched take her blood pressure and take her medication since she was in her 30s.
Mhm.
And therefore, if you take care of these things and continue to exercise as she did, and I am doing, you never know. There are other reasons why one could meet into major health problems, because your environment you live in
Yeah.
could affect your health as individually and collectively. So I would say that it's something that all of us must take into serious consideration, because if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to do much
Mhm.
to be able to help your society and your family and yourself in a general sense. So your health has to be a key area of interest.
Mhm. Dr. Mitchell, Grenada is still recovering from Hurricane Beryl, and climate change continues to bring stronger storms and rising seas, etc. How do you interpret Grenada's current situation in the face of these threats?
Well, we've had it in recent times. We saw what Ivan and Emily did to us,
Mhm.
and clearly we have to be conscious of the need to protect our environment and to be conscious of the things that affect our environment in a general sense. Um, we don't control nature, and therefore, what could happen, we have to make sure we put systems in place in case there is that problem, and that's why we invested in CRIP. And that when Beryl came and this government came into office, um, um, after we Beryl came after we left government,
Mhm.
and this government in 3 weeks got $118 million through our investment. And they're still saying nothing was done by an MP when MP got into government. And so I'm saying too that we have to understand the necessity of protecting our environment and doing whatever we can to ensure that we can limit any consequences of natural disasters
Mhm.
that occur.
Mhm.
And investment in our infrastructure is important, and also ensuring that we do not do enough damage to our environment, which of course is a factor there too, and to be conscious of the problems that we could face,
Mhm.
and educating our population as to the things that are necessary for their own environment and what we should be doing individually and collectively in protecting our environment as much as is possible.
Recently, there has been public attention on ministers facing financial improprieties, though no formal investigations have been announced. How do you view the situation, and what do you think it implies for leadership accountability and public trust in our country?
Well, I think clearly the present prime minister had very little experience in government, and he simply does not seem to understand the when issues of this nature are raised about possible corruption in government. If it's not true
Mm-hmm.
and you do not provide some explanation or initiative to people to feel to get the facts, then it can look like it's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is true and you have not taken, and if you've done an investigation and found out it's true and you don't take steps to discipline the offenders, then of course you are creating a major problem. That the whole government now would be under a cloud if these things happen and leadership does not seem to take steps to provide some sort of um, some sort of feeling on part of the
Mm-hmm.
population about exactly what the situation is. And that's why I always said when I was in government and issues were raised about any specific action of the government or ministers. We took steps. And that's why we had a couple of inquiries during our period of
Mm-hmm.
time. You call the issue of briefcase when this false story went outside and people believing that I committed those crimes. I mean, we had a formal inquiry by an independent commission of inquiry, Dr. Cheltenham from Barbados, and they were able to bring anyone who prepared to come forward and give evidence. And the report showed that there were no clearly what was said was completely false, and
Mm-hmm.
they had supposed to have a tape to show that I was collecting this $500,000. And of course, all these things. But people are able to feel secured after the investigation because
Mm-hmm.
it was proven to be absolutely false.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did say to people, if there was any shred of evidence about that issue, I would have resigned. I would not wait for a commission of inquiry
Mm-hmm.
before resigning because the, the, the image of the country comes first before my personal image. And I think this was clearly evident from the actions that we took.
Mm-hmm. Doc, we're about to wrap up, but beyond utilities and youth programs, NMP has carried out a number of projects over the years. How do you reflect on the impact in communities across Grenada?
Well, let's face it, the question of your young people future is always an important factor in anything with any government does. The young people are going to be our future leaders. Some of them are taking leadership role already.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that we have to put systems in place to ensure that they have a sense of hope. And what's happening now, there is a sense of hopelessness among the young people. I would say most of the young people, I don't have the exact statistics, would have voted, majority of them would
Mm-hmm.
have voted for the present government. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure from all the reports that we see that they're disillusioned, that there is no evidence of interest on the future of the young people. There are more interests of individual ministers and the government enjoying themselves at the expense of the country. So I think we have to understand that this is creating a problem because if the young people feel a sense of hopelessness, like it appears that most of them feel now,
Mm-hmm.
you see some things that are taking place, and I've mentioned it before, even in this program, that you see every part of the country, young people are just sitting at tables on the streets, gambling, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak, and which is quite frightening. Others are going to be involved in drug activities and things that will destroy themselves and their families. So we must be very concerned as to what is taking place and the lack of serious initiative for the young people. And remember, we have thousands of them out there unemployed, and which which creates a problem for us. And then you have those coming out of school again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hundreds coming out of school in not long from now. So you find the problem is going to be compounded as we go along, and that these are concerns. And the thing is, Amanda, you're not hearing anything from the leadership of the country about those issues. People are not hearing, they're not feeling, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
seeing. So it creates a whole set of disillusionment in the country. And it pains me for the young people, boys and girls in the country at this time, who feel that sense of hopelessness prevailing in the country. And it worries me as an individual.
Doc, before we wrap up, you're in opposition, but why are people so preoccupied with Keith Mitchell's actions, his decisions, instead of focusing on policy?
My private life. They can't even leave me alone. The only politician I know whose private life has ever been, you know, been, been focused on by media houses or house or houses is me. Maybe they have a difficulty coping with me. I don't know what their problem is. I don't even take myself as seriously as they do take me seriously. I always said they have, during that period of government, they have made all kind of accusation against me, which turned to be false, false accusations. At one point, I was supposed to be a big drug man. I never smoke a cigarette, and I don't involve myself in any drug activities or have any friends that I know. In fact, at one occasion, someone used to visit my place and found out that he was involved from information I got. And I told him not to ever come home by the house again because I don't want any perception that I'm harboring people with any such interest. At one point, when we got in government, there was a plane, the banner, and so I sold the plane as a minister and I kept the money for myself. And our rumors all over the place where they played. Absolutely false. And all kinds of things that I used to always say the only thing they never accused me. But one time, a lady just before an election, I think it was 1999, said that how I tried to rape her. I don't even know the person. so,
Mm,
so I said, well, I had to find out who is this person. And the next thing after the election, she ran away. You never heard from the person again. But
mm,
clearly, it was instigated by political opponents at the time. So I used to say they've accused me of everything in my life. They turned out to be false, but they never accused me of murder. And recently, I heard a guy that I have no relationship with, no friendly relationship. I used to say that I one plotted to be to kill somebody with him. Be kill people. My whole life has been one of non-violence. So it's just sad that people, and there has to be elements in the politics
mhm,
who's close to those individuals
mhm,
who try to try to damage my image.
mhm,
But you can't damage somebody whose credibility is so intact. After 40 years of service, 40 years as a representative, 23 years as prime minister, all of a sudden now I become somebody plotting murder. And nobody heard about it before
mhm,
until now, because certain persons did not get what they wanted in the politics of the country with the new national party. It's unfortunate. It's sad. I would never be making such accusations against anyone, falsely so. And I think it's important that, but people understand the desperation and the power hungriness of certain people in the country and that. And I think they get the rightful place. In the power will never be given to those persons in this country. And especially when you do things like that, you make people more convinced that you should not be given political power. And so on. So whatever persons are being used to tarnish decent people image, those who are responsible will not get political power.
mhm. Thank you so much, Doc.
Mm.
That's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Show them